France will not buy American weapons for Ukraine, Politico reports, citing two French officials. The publication notes that the initiative for such purchases is mainly German. Given Europe's limited production capacity, Merz's government believes that purchasing American weapons is one of the 5 ways to quickly supply Ukraine, the newspaper writes. However, France, whose president has long insisted that Europeans develop their own defense industry base through local purchases, was noticeably absent from the list of countries willing to finance American supplies. At the same time, France is facing difficulties in increasing its defense budget. It is noted that, in addition to Germany, the UK and the Netherlands, as well as 4 other Nordic countries, will participate in the financing scheme. The Czech Republic will also not join the NATO initiative to purchase American weapons to be transferred to Kyiv, Prime Minister Petr Fiala said. Quote, "The Czech Republic is focusing on other projects and ways to help Ukraine. For example, because of the ammunition initiative. Therefore, we are not currently considering joining this project," he explained. Earlier, Hungary made a similar statement, and Italy, like France and the Czech Republic, also has no intention of participating in the purchase of American weapons for our country. This was reported by La Stampa newspaper. The Italian Ministry of Defense says that there was never any talk of buying American weapons, meaning that Chancellor Merz's decision is an independent step by Germany. The newspaper notes that the main reason is the lack of funds for such purchases. Also, the weapons systems transferred to Ukraine by Italy correspond to other technological configurations. In particular, SAMP-T systems are manufactured by Italy and France. Not to target Moscow, Donald Trump commented on U.S. media reports that he had allegedly discussed strikes on the Russian capital with President Zelensky. Journalists asked the White House chief of staff about this conversation and whether Trump believes that Zelensky should strike. To which Donald Trump replied that, in his opinion, Kyiv should not target Moscow. Donald Trump also denied that he was going to provide Ukraine with long-range weapons, which was reported by Western media the day before, and the U.S. president called the 50-day deadline for the Kremlin to sign a truce a very long time. And if this does not happen, Trump promises new sanctions, but he believes that a truce can be reached earlier. Mr. President, why are you giving Putin 50 days to attack Ukraine? I don't think 50 days is too long. Everything can happen faster. I don't think it's very long. You'd better ask Biden the same thing. Why did he drag us into this war? At the end of the 50 days, if we don't make a deal, it will be very bad. Tariffs and sanctions will be extended. Should Zelensky target Moscow? No, he should not target Moscow. It will be problematic for Ukraine to use Tomahawks even if the United States gives them to it, said Vadim Skibitsky, deputy head of the Main Intelligence Directorate. Quote, "They are not easy to use. The main launchers are warships or strategic bombers. We do not have such strategic bombers," Skibitsky said. For the U.S., the main platform for launching these missiles is ships. Skibitsky also said that negotiations are underway with Washington to lift restrictions on the use of ATACMS missiles. Earlier, the Washington Post claimed that Trump had already allegedly given such consent, but he did not confirm this. It is very important for us to get the approval of the United States to use long-range missiles. We want to destroy and disorganize the enemy in accordance with NATO procedures, Skibitsky said. Speaking of launchers, let me remind you that Germany is also allegedly discussing the purchase of Typhoon launchers from the United States, which are designed to launch Tomahawk missiles capable of hitting targets at a distance of up to 2,000 kilometers, including in Russia. This was stated by German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, who discussed this idea in the U.S. with Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth, and according to Pistorius, Hegseth doesn't seem to mind. In this way, Germany will be able to increase its own defense capabilities and strengthen the deterrence potential of the country and Europe. Partners welcomed Donald Trump's announcement about selling American weapons to Ukraine, but it seems that even the White House did not fully understand what he meant. This was reported by Reuters. The plan that Donald Trump and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte have developed in recent days, according to two sources familiar with the talks, has been welcomed by Ukraine and European leaders. Trump's shift in tone, now distancing himself from Putin, was welcomed in Kyiv and beyond. However, after the announcement of the plan to supply weapons to Ukraine, it became clear that Trump presented only a general concept, not a detailed plan. The extent of Ukraine's support will depend on future negotiations on who will provide what equipment. During his meeting with Trump, Rutte mentioned 6 NATO countries, Finland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, the Netherlands, and Canada, which are ready to participate in the arms purchase program. Senior sources in the embassies of these countries in the United States told Reuters that they personally learned about the plan when it was announced. Even close allies of the United States seem to have learned about this proposal in real time. I understand no one was informed of the exact details in advance, and I also suspect that within the administration, they are only now beginning to understand what Trump's statements mean in practice, said one European ambassador. Kurt Volker, former U.S. ambassador to NATO, said that Donald Trump has found a way to balance support for Ukraine with the political realities of the Republican Party. He says European allies funding U.S. arms supplies aligns with his campaign promises. Volker noted that Ukraine could eventually receive 12-13 Patriot batteries, but it could take a year to deliver them. A NATO spokesperson said the alliance will coordinate arms deliveries through a security assistance and training mechanism for Ukraine in Germany. Now, according to 3 U.S. arms officials, the real work begins. The Americans are negotiating with their NATO allies and assessing who is willing to send what to Ukraine. European officials are generally positive about this, but they also need details. One official named Germany, Greece, the Netherlands, and Spain as good candidates for sending a Patriot battery to Kyiv because they have multiple batteries, but the threats they face are relatively remote. Countries like Greece and Spain have rejected requests to send Patriot systems to Ukraine, citing the need to protect their own nations and NATO. Trump's claim of credit for additional weapons to Ukraine has sparked tension in Europe, as Kaja Kallas mentioned. Another official said that the Trump administration is currently looking at NATO stockpiles to see what they have available, and the next step will be to try to convince the allies to give Ukraine equipment in exchange for some kind of trade. Trump told reporters that one country has 17 Patriot systems, with some set to be transferred to Ukraine. But the figure has caused widespread surprise among European allies and in the U.S. Congress, many of whom were not informed of the plans at all, and according to U.S. and European officials, no NATO member other than the United States has as many Patriot systems. This is what knowledgeable sources dealing with this issue say. And this, accordingly, caused speculation that Trump may have been referring to specific Patriot components, such as launchers or missiles. At the moment, people are saying, and I quote, "We can help, but we don't know what it means," the official said. Lindsey Graham advised Putin to turn to the leader of Iran if a peace agreement with Ukraine is not signed within 50 days. He also added that the statement made by Donald Trump on July 14th that Ukraine would be sent American weapons at the expense of European allies was good news. No less important was his statement that if the fighting does not stop in 50 days, Trump will impose 100% tariffs on countries that buy cheap Russian oil that supports Putin's military machine, hitting the Russian dictator where it hurts, Graham wrote. If Putin and others are wondering what will happen on the 51st day, I would advise them to call the Ayatollah the supreme leader of Iran. If I were a country that buys cheap Russian oil while supporting Putin, I would take President Trump at his word, the Republican said.